Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Darsha.
And I'm Dr. Altamash Raja.
And welcome to Medicine Redefined,
a podcast where we will explore the often overlooked but necessary components of health, what we consider to be the fundamentals.
We will investigate topics and practices that can give you and your patients the best chance to optimize a healthy lifestyle. It's time to move the needle forward and put the health back in healthcare.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Darsha and I are joined today by Dr. Janeeka Benoit, who is better known as Dr. J on social media. She is a board-certified internal medicine physician and sports medicine specialist. She is also the founder of MedFit.do. Dr. J is a runner, exercise enthusiast, and former ACE-certified personal trainer. And not only does she enjoy caring for athletes, she also has a passion for preventing chronic disease through exercise so people can live holistically healthier lives, both mentally and physically. As an osteopathic physician, Dr. J is focused on treating the whole body so people can live more fully and have life transformation from the inside out. Some of the things that we touch on in this episode, of course, include her journey into medicine, why she's so passionate about the topic of exercise, and something that she routinely talks about on many of these platforms as well as her social media platform. But the bulk of the conversation is going to be around habit formation. We know it's important to implement changes into our lives, but how do we do that? And I think the easiest way and the most successful way for us to is instill good habits into our daily lives. It also may mean to get rid of some of the bad habits. Three of us spent a great deal of time diving into how we found it successful and apply some of the knowledge that we routinely learn both in school and some of the knowledge that you might have learned on this show or some of the other discussions that you might have heard elsewhere. So we hope that you find this to be a bit more of an actionable rather than a mechanistic, scientific-based discussion. Without further delay, please enjoy our conversation with Dr. J.
Janeeka, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So excited to have you here. We're going to talk about one of my favorite things to do. Historically, I used to say it's my favorite thing to do in the past, but then when you're sleep deprived for long enough, sleep becomes your favorite thing to do, as you know, being a trainee. Before we get into all that, Janeeka, I'm going to ask you a question that every single doctor prepares for, but something that we don't rehearse as often the further we get away from training. Why medicine?
Wow, honestly, I don't have like this. I have to bring you down my story because it's not just a sentence. So I've been a nerd for most of my life, as most doctors are, and initially, I wanted to go into medicine because I was like, really, the only thing that I'm good at is studying. Like, that's the only thing that I know how to do well. And I can study, and yeah, I could definitely do that. And I enjoyed science. So I was like, okay, I can do medicine. And then when I was in the 6th grade, my English teacher, she nominated me to go to a medical forum for high school students who are interested in medicine. So I stayed about 2 weeks at UCLA, and I shadowed physicians, and I also shadowed medical students at the cadaver lab, and we collaborated in medically oriented projects. And I was like, "Ooh, this is just so exciting! Like, I'm definitely going into medicine." But I've always been shy. So I remember like during my 3rd year, I was just like, oh my gosh, now I have to speak to a patient. Like, I'm not ready for this. And I remember my very first patient encounter on my 3rd year of medical school. And it was actually a couple. And I believe the husband was the patient, and the wife, came along for the visit. And I just remember just like this intimate connection that I had with this couple. And we were like, they even like brought out their wedding picture, which was black and white. He was in the Navy, so he had his like Navy costume on, and she was so beautiful in her vintage wedding dress. And I just like intimately connected to them, and I was very surprised how quickly I was able to develop that connection. And it was just amazing because I remember putting my handle on that metal doorknob, being so nervous, right? To going out of that room, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I was born to do. So that's so that's really how I got into it.
No, I love that. And I think that that's an important thing for us to remember. As I mentioned, when you're in training, Darsh and I both are, and I'm really almost at the end of that tunnel. But that's day to day. That's something that's challenging to kind of keep at the forefront of your mind. And
Mhm.
it seems like you had a pretty awesome story and some people to thank for to kind of remind you that you mentioned, where are you originally from? Are you from Southern California?
No, I'm originally from New York City, Brooklyn, born and bred.
Love that. Northeast person. And so where are you now? Where are you practicing?
So right now I'm doing locums. I am currently in San Diego, California. It's amazing. If you're considering something chill after training, I definitely encourage locums. So yeah, right now though I'm doing primary care locums, but I did secure a sports medicine locums assignment. I'm super proud of myself because those are very hard to
Nice.
find.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm just enjoying life and traveling right now and just seeing what else life has to offer.
I love that. And so, I mean, I think what may be worthwhile is just taking a step back and kind of explaining the scope of what a sports medicine physician is, right? I mean, people have heard, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think that today's sports medicine physician, that the tools that we have in our tool belt are extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? They're much wider, right? Than
Oh
than
my
we could do.
goodness.
The scope is much wider than we could do in the past. And so, what's your day to day like? Like when you say sports medicine, like what's your practice look like? Like, are you become your team physician? You know what I mean? Like, are you doing more clinic type stuff? I think that might be worth explaining a little bit.
Yeah, well, so just coming out of sports medicine fellowship, and so in fellowship, I would cover teams and go to training rooms and go to the games on the weekends. So now I'm actually doing primary care at a VA, and I mean, there's a lot of sports, your quote unquote sports medicine that is involved there. Dealing with military veterans and all their musculoskeletal conditions that they've experienced during their service. So but what like you said, sports medicine is completely, they're so wide and so vast. So although I'm not treating the typical athlete, but in this sense they are, they are athletes, right? Just
Hmm.
older athletes. A lot of them are still maintaining a physical routine. Others have not. Others have, old injuries that I'm there to treat and diagnose. So it's different now. It's different from when I was a sports medicine fellow. So I'm not going to games on the weekends anymore, but and I'm not seeing those acute injuries as much as I did during fellowship. But there's still a lot of my sports medicine knowledge that I'm using treating these veterans.
Yeah, I think that's important to understand, right? It's athletes, active individuals, and what we know now is that with just everything social media is fitness has made a comeback, right? So people who didn't feel like they were necessarily athletes, maybe even in middle school, high school, college, they have opportunities to get involved. I know that a lot of people will not CrossFit for one reason, but something that they've done a phenomenal job is getting people to be more involved, right? The camaraderie aspect of it as well. And,
Hmm.
with the same respect, there are a lot of other classes and stuff. So people do that. And unfortunately, with that, with more active lifestyle, come to some injuries. And so typically sports medicine physicians, musculoskeletal physicians, us as well, physiatrists, I mean, we're kind of the first line, the non-surgical stuff, which most of MSK is.
Hmm.
But you are extremely passionate and vocal about exercise. And, there's this whole idea now that exercise is medicine. The three of us have known this for a long time, but people are starting to appreciate it. There's a push in our parent academy, AMSSM, American Medical Society of Sports Medicine, about exercise as medicine and using it in adjunct or in place of a lot of pharmacological treatments. What's that about? Where did the passion come from? Why are you so passionate about that?
Yeah, so this started really in my journey prior to going to medical school. I've been involved in just like being active in fitness for a long time, and I think it started when I was in middle school because I was obese and I started exercising, and then in high school, my one of the teachers, he was a new teacher at the time. He created a new cross country track club. So that's how I got involved in running. And then prior to going to medical school, I became a personal trainer. So I was training prior to going to medical school. So I've been in just the fitness industry for a while. And so going into internal medicine, especially in primary care and even inpatient, there's I would feel overwhelmed for the patients when I would refill and prescribe medicines, because I would look at that list and I'm like, oh my goodness, how many medicines are you on? And I have to refill all of these, and just something like just something within me did not sit right. I'm like, why? Like, what am I doing to help curtail this, right? Because then with all these medicines, they're all side effects as well, and then you have to be cautious of the side effects, making sure that you're not combining certain medications together, and wanting to avoid those interactions. So that caused me a lot of distress. Like I felt like I was more distressed than some of the patients sometimes. And I noticed that in a lot of my patient encounters, I would talk about fitness. I would actually like be in the room performing exercising, showing them, right? And telling
I
them,
love that.
like, no, seriously, I used to like demonstrate push-ups against the computer desk, like push the keyboard to the side and show them how to you know and some of them just would look at me like, oh, what are you doing? Like, who is this crazy doctor that I'm seeing? Because just some of them were not mentally there, right? Because sometimes I mean, inherently you want to see your patient do well, right? And as physicians, and I think this kind of gets trained in us, that you tell your patients what to do. Like, you should exercise, you should eat right? And that's what I was doing. I'm like, oh yeah, you should according to these guidelines, this is what you should do. And I realized that just me telling the patients that they should exercise doesn't always guarantee that that's what they're going to do, right? And I'm like, well, how? And then I started thinking, well, how can I influence behavior change? Like, how do I get people to actually change, right? And I started I started reading a lot of books about habits, and just I started reading a lot of books about mindset. And I'm like, well, it all starts with their mindset. And then I delved into the world of coaching, and I realized that this was an actual thing. Like, this is what coaches do. They influence behavior, but the way that they do it is that they do it through um, discovery. That means allowing the patient or the client to achieve their own self discovery, and eliciting the patient's or client's own motivation instead of using your motivation to try to make them motivated. So that is what I'm really passionate about, is just allowing mental fitness to help facilitate into physical fitness. So
Dr. J, just like Altamash was saying, fitness kind of came back, and we see that on social media. But the other thing we see on social media as well now is a lot of people talking about how to motivate others and drive and influence change. And one of those people that me and Altamash look at is Adam Grant, who's actually doing a lot of work on this. So you've slowly become now an expert in terms of motivating. And like you said, you're now coaching, and you actually created an acronym to help people understand how they can shape their values and identify with being the type of person that they want to be. And that acronym is HABIT. Can you explain that to us?
yes, yes. Yeah, first of all, I'm so proud of this acronym.
Yeah.
So habit, H stands for healthy mindset. And H, so that really involves evaluating and just laying out all your limiting beliefs on the table, because as humans, we have so many thoughts that go through our mind every day. A lot of it is negative self-talk that we tell ourselves, and so it's important to actually just lay it all out. And in addition to that is identify what your why is. Why do you want to become this different person? What are the underlying feelings, the emotions that is facilitating that desire, right? And then A stands for affirming new beliefs, Because after we've laid down those limiting beliefs on the table, we then have to change them. We have to change them into a positive affirmation. And I do this, and I know a lot of people think that it's woo-woo, but this actually does work. But the way that it works is that it has to be a habit. You have to make it a regular practice. So the way that this can work is, number one, it has to be believable, right? Because if you don't believe it, then that's not going to make you want to change, right? And this goes into the self-efficacy piece, um, um, self-efficacy part of the whole public health model, because self-efficacy is a person's belief in their capacity to change, right? So that is why the affirmations is there. So just to give an example of an affirmation, if you say exercising is hard, or I can't exercise, then what do you think your ability to exercise is going to be if you're telling yourself that you can't do it, right? So you can then grab another affirmation that, oh, I can do hard things, or I can do difficult things, or I'm committed to exercising 3 days a week at 8 a.m. So creating that affirmation into a positive one can help build your self-efficacy. The other thing is, like I said, make it a regular practice. So something that I do is I actually put this on my schedule, and I keep a list of affirmations in my Google Drive. I have a document labeled affirmations, and I read that to myself every morning, before I go to work. And you will be so amazed, so amazed, what that does, because the regular practice of making it a habit, those affirmations then become part of your subconscious.
Absolutely.
Right? So because you're telling yourself, okay, I can do hard things, meaning I can exercise, and that's hard, and I can do that. You've improved your self-efficacy. You're improving your belief to do that, and making a regular practice improves it even further. Okay. Next is B, which stands for believing greater, because once you've created your affirmation, so for example, let's say you created an affirmation, I'm committed to walking 30 minutes daily at 8 a.m. And you do that. Let's say you do that for 2 weeks, okay? And then you reach a point like, okay, well, what else can I do? Right? Because it's important to create those micro habits, because those micro habits are quick victories, right? And what do those quick victories do to the human brain? You're like, oh, I can do this. Like I can do 30 minutes. All right, so let me try to do 45 minutes or maybe an hour, right? So that's believing greater. I is incorporating change. And this is actually just a summation of what I've stated previously is, you're, creating affirmations, thinking about affirmations that you believe, right? You actually want to believe them in order for it to work. You're, creating your schedule of exercises that you'll do, right? You have to do something different in order to be somebody different, right? So that's I. And T is transforming lives, because this is the whole mission that I'm behind, is really creating transformational change. I felt before, when I was in residency, I felt like I wasn't changing anyone's life, and I'm like, I want more. Like I did not go through all of this schooling to not be able to make someone's life better. And my goal, what I tell myself, when I see a patient, I want that patient to leave differently than how they came in, right? And honestly, going through this practice, using it in my own life, right, has allowed me to become such a better doctor. I'm happier. I listen to my patients more. I'm able to meet them where they're at. I'm able to approach them from a sense of non-judgment, which can be pretty prevalent in the physician community. I know I definitely handle some patients with a lot of judgment, but it takes practice, right? It takes practice. So I'm super, super, super excited to teach my patients how to do this so that they can, just live better lives, live transformational lives, which is my mission.
Dr. J, I love that last letter T when you talk about transforming lives. And a lot of it you just spoke about how you wanted to do that. But I think people need to realize that when they start exercising, when they start changing their own life, they're also going to be the spark of change for others, right? I go to the gym and sometimes I'll see an obese or super obese person just lifting. And I'm like, it's just like, wow, like good for you. You know what? I want to do something that challenges me today as well. So I love that
Mm-hmm.
last letter. And I think that's huge for people to understand their why. And I kind of want to go back to that letter H, because you talk about how people need to develop their why. And oftentimes as a pre-med coach, it's exactly what I do for people to write a better personal statement, right? Rather than keep it on that superficial level. How do you get to
Mm-hmm.
the deeper why with your patients when you start to talk about these things?
Yeah, so honestly, it's just allowing them to talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's more listening than anything because they will tell you what is on their mind, right? And it's listening to their feelings, right? And it's listening to their needs, both met and unmet. They will tell you what they're feeling. And so I've learned to do less
Mm-hmm.
talking and more listening, which is sometimes really hard as a doctor because you want to tell your patients what to do and when you want to give them your recommendation, but it's just really not saying much and allowing them to give you the information. And then what you do for with the information, you ask open-ended questions that ignite
Mm-hmm.
reflection, right? Um, so that is really how I've
It
been
is
doing
it
it.
is really hard to not talk, especially when you're trying to be a coach or transform lives, right? Because you're like, listen to me, I'm the one creating value here. I'm the one that can spark this change in you. And a lot of the times, like you said in the very beginning of that habit acronym, is you want to make that horse thirsty, as kind of Altamar says. And that comes from them hearing themselves and saying, this is within me the whole time, right? This is kind of why I want to do these things. So that's awesome. I did want to ask you though, you did touch on books earlier in this episode. What books, if any, do you think people should read to learn about habits or affirmations or growth?
Oh my gosh, I'm such a book nerd. Okay, let me tell you.
Let's
So
do it.
the how I got started with affirmations was from Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning.
Okay.
That's what so him I have so many people to attribute to during residency because during residency I was trying to find out like the essence of who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I was so unhappy and I'm like, there has to be a better way. I know that I'm designed to be a physician. Like, I know that without a doubt. When I came out of that room as a third year medical student, I'm like, this is what I was born to do, right? And I know I have this higher calling on my life to transform lives. I really do believe that and feel that. So I went on a search. So Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, he helped me develop a morning routine. And so I established my morning routine, and that's why affirmations is part of my morning routine because he has his whole acronym. It's called SAVERS. S is for scribing, so he journals, and I do that as well. C is I'm sorry, it's called SAVERS. A is for affirmations. V is for visioning. E is for okay, I'm forgetting. R is for reading and S is for okay, I may not remember
No
all,
worries.
but basically basically he creates a morning routine. But what I love about that is that from reading that book, I was able to find out what worked for me. So I don't follow his to the T. I do incorporate a lot of what he taught in the book as my own, right? So I do journal in the morning. I read affirmations. I exercise in the morning. I meditate. So I read the Bible. in the morning. So those are all the things that allowed me to become mentally sharp before I leave my door, because I need to be mentally sharp. Really for my patients too, right? Because a lot of them are coming to me with their problems, and I'm like, I need to be mentally robust so I can handle it. Miracle Morning. The other one, this is also a Hal Elrod book. It is called The Miracle Equation. It's like a sequel to Miracle Morning. And so Miracle Morning is like the what, and Miracle Equation is like the how. Another one is Atomic Habits.
James Clear, love it.
I forget the, yeah, really good book. I also listen to, besides books, I love Jim Rohn.
Yeah, Jim Rohn's great.
He's Jim Rohn. There's one statement that he said changed my life, really. And it says, he said, work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Ooh.
That has stuck with me forever. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. So yes, even though residency was tough, I still, established that morning routine and that exercise routine, even on nights. People, like my co-residents, were like, oh, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I have to work harder on myself than I do on my job. So regardless of what I'm going through at work, I still have to establish this routine for myself. I still have to make this a habit, no matter what I'm going through, because this is who I am. This is my identity, right? And another quote that I love from Aristotle, he says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not then an act, but a habit. So what are you doing on a regular basis that affirms who you are, right? Because that's when it is a habit, right? Because you are what you repeatedly do. So who else, man? I know I've read so many books.
I can also throw some in there for
right now.
Some of the guests. Go for it. Yeah, if you know any, go.
Yeah, right now I'm reading The One Thing.
Oh, that is one of my top 5 books of all time. Gary Keller, love it.
Yes. I'm reading The One Thing, and it just talks about the power of focus. And I love, and he talks about identity, right? Because also in the book, he talks about, right, in order for you to, be someone different, you have to do something different, right? And all the challenges that I'm going through, even, being on podcasts, that has been a challenge for me. But when I think about the bigger vision, right, the big why, he talks about the big why and the smaller why. My big why is to be this person who can transform lives, right? And in order to do that, I have to, put myself on social media and put myself on podcasts. So, and network and connect with people and be a part of communities with people who think like me and can challenge me and who have much bigger dreams than I do, right? But I had to do that. But I know my big why, right? I know that big one thing. That's the big one thing that I'm after. So, but I'm pretty sure there's so much more books, but I can't think of them at the moment. But what books do you have? I'm curious.
I'll add to it. Just to your point about building the community. It's just, we're talking about building a tribe, right? I think, a super hot topic. People like to talk about culture, and I keep coming back to this Adam Grant's book, Think Again. I just finished it, and so it's fresh in my mind. And in it, he talks about sometimes changing the culture, i.e. medicine. It's not very easy for a few trainees, for a few physicians. It's just a big ship that it's going to hard to turn that around sometimes, right? It's going to take a lot of time. What you can do is you can affect the subculture. And part of that is kind of finding your tribe, like-minded folks like that we've been talking about. I want to go back to the concept of listening that you talk about. A lot of the skills that you've mentioned today is just this thing is called motivational interviewing, right? My co-fellow and I, we talk a lot about therapeutic listening, but then there's also this concept, again, Adam Grant talks about persuasive listening, is finding people or helping people find their own motives, especially when your motives don't align, right? If individuals coming in offline, we talked about somebody coming in with osteoarthritis and they just want to get out of pain, but that maybe 20, 30 pounds is not only going to help them take the load off the knee,
but it's going to pay dividends when we're talking about cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, right? Atherosclerosis, that kind of stuff. And so in it, I mean, look, the old saying is you have 2 years, one mouth for a reason, right? And how we can all be better. But he really talks about listening without a clear agenda and attempting to respond, which is what most folks do, particularly us, right? We've done 10 years of training and I've got all this knowledge in my back pocket. You got to hear me out. But listening so intently that you can help the other person find clarity in their own ideas, right? So you only ask questions to get that person to crystallize their thinking, really, really tease into why that's so important. So for you, Dr. J, 2 other books that, for that, of course, think again. You mentioned Atomic Habits. Love that. I think that a prequel to that one is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I think that as much as James Clear is, his book is more about the actionable tips of habit, Charles Duhigg explores why habits even matter, or, why are they so impactful. Changemaker by Dr. John Berardi, absolutely phenomenal for, my colleagues in the health and fitness industry to really, again, try to explore that bigger why and try to identify this gap between folks like us having this conversation and people who maybe aren't there yet. So something to think about. I think Darsh has a few.
So for, let's say for habits overall, BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits is also a great one in conjunction with James Clear. And I know you already mentioned kind of why you need the small wins and the tiny habits. Healthy Mindset, growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think is a must for anyone trying to really just get into that personal belief of being better than who they are. And then affirmations, I really love Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Although it's more focused on money, I think it's still about, having that vision and convincing yourself that you can do something bigger, like The Secret. I think it's the original secret is Think and Grow Rich. I would say those are the 3. And then any of the Ryan Holiday books, honestly, I finished the trilogy. I just recently posted it. So and any of his books, I think, will give anyone a deeper perspective just on identity and living, I think, a more clear life with purpose.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, with purpose, because that's what I was searching for a long time.
Here's a quick message from our sponsor, Comp Health. There are a lot of podcasts out there, murder mysteries, breaking news. There's even a podcast about garden gnomes. But instead, you're here, learning how to be the best version of yourself. Smart move. Do you know what else is a smart move? Working a locum tenens assignment with Comp Health. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you are a physician, you already have a job. But that's the best part. You can work flexible locum assignments on the side for extra income, or you can work locums full-time too. And to top it all off, locums almost always pays more on average. Just head to financialresidency.com/comp health and see what locums can do for you financially. And now back to the show.
That's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
So Dr. J, you mentioned a couple of your daily, almost non-negotiable practice, right? You mentioned affirmations, meditation you threw in there. You talked about journaling. What are other daily non-negotiable practices that you have?
Yeah, so for me, so the first thing that I do, I actually study the Bible. The first thing I do is that I spend about 45 minutes to an hour. So I have to get up really early to do all this stuff. And,
what time do you get up? What time is your
3:05 is the time I get up.
I'm sorry, did you say 3:05?
Yeah.
As in, okay. Yeah, you're right. That's early. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So, and I actually got a faith coach. So I really went really far with this because like I said, that's what I was searching for. I was searching for like my purpose and trying to figure out like what am I supposed to do on this earth, right? What are my God-given gifts? What are the things that make me unique? What are the things that people tell me that they compliment me on, right? So I started to just take inventory of things that people would tell me that I was good at, and a lot of things that people told me that I was good at was like people told me that I was a coach, like, oh, you should be a coach, or you sound like a coach, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should be a coach. And But reading the Bible has allowed me to just find, so much wisdom, so much truth, so much purpose. The Bible is a whole bunch of stories, right? And in the Bible, there are so many people who have gone through different challenges, right? And it's, the belief in something greater than themselves that allows them to endure those challenges, right? The belief that no matter what I'm going through, I know that this bigger, thing that's above me already has ordained my steps, right? All I have to do is take the next best step and keep on going. So that is what I'm committed to doing, is just showing up. Just show up consistently, habitually, because I know that my steps are already ordained. And reading the Bible, it really motivates me and places me in in such a position of grace. It allows me to be even just more compassionate to myself, to other people. It's really it really has changed my life. I've seen, just looking back on this year alone, because I've never really been into reading the Bible. I actually used to fall asleep when my parents would tell me to read it, my mom specifically. But I knew that I had to do something different. I knew that I was called for something more, something that I couldn't describe, and I just had to figure it out for myself. So I actually got a faith coach, and I have a faith coach now, and she's teaching me how to read and study the Bible for myself, and it's paid dividends.
I can see the coaching thing. You're just having this conversation with you for the last 30 minutes or so. I've been so fired up, and I should be, considering it's almost bedtime for all of us. At least we're a little further ahead from you, right?
Yeah.
But finding the purpose, I mean, that's really super important, right? I mean, again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, that's how it starts, and you got to have that why, like you already mentioned. Darsh here has written about, I know that, the consistency is the most important thing. We've talked about James Clear quite a bit. I think in his recent interview with Peter Attia, he talked about, I don't think this was in his book. I think he just gave an anecdote of an individual, basically, who was trying to incorporate exercise into his life. And this person would go to the gym, set a 5-minute timer, 5-minute workout, honestly, and he wouldn't do anything more than that. He would go in, work out for 5 minutes, and even if he wanted to do more, he wouldn't. He would go home and stop. And he did that for a year consistently. And one might say, well, that sounds kind of ridiculous. If you're already in there, why not just do it? And the idea behind this was that he was just getting into creating that habit of showing up consistently without excuses, right? And so now the most difficult barrier of that friction has been reduced. Hey, I'm good at showing up. I will make it to the gym. And then you can start adding more complexity, right? You can make it 10 minutes. You can add more exercise, whatever you might have. And I think the second part to this for James Clear is, his book is called Atomic Habits, because he's talking about how tiny changes make, big splashes, right? Essentially. And I think the example he gives is, if you get on a plane from Southern California and we all sit in the back of the plane, if it makes a 5-degree turn, something that we won't be able to appreciate, but over those couple of thousand miles, instead of being in New York City, where it was initially destined to go, that plane ends up in Washington, D.C. So the idea that he's saying is that showing up, or tiny little change that you make after years and years and years, you can have drastically different results. So I think that's just a super important concept that I really want people to understand and take away from this.
Yeah. No, definitely. And this is, and when I was thinking about how do I help people influence behavior change, I had to think about my own life and things that I've learned, right? Things like in Atomic Habits, and creating those quick wins, those quick victories are so instrumental to our success in creating those lifestyle changes, because we can see that person with the 6-pack abs and the nice bum, right? and think that, oh, I'll never get there. It seems so far, right? But creating those just small shifts on a regular basis does wonders, does absolutely wonders. But it's the part with sticking with it, right? It's making it a habit, putting on a schedule, creating reminders to yourself, like, this is what I'm doing, and what I'm doing affirms who I am.
Yeah.
Right? This is who I'm becoming, right? And it's like, okay, like, who are you becoming? Who are you developing to be? Because you have to do something different to become that different person, right? And it goes back to what Aristotle says: we are what we repeatedly do.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love those micro
Yeah,
habits.
you know what this made me think of? I was reading Dr. Shafali, who's actually like a parent coach, and she says, when you want your kids to clean up the toys that they've kind of put all over the carpet, rather than asking them and say, hey, do you mind cleaning up, or let's sing a song about cleanup, ask them if they're a cleaner, right? Are you a cleaner? And most of the time they say, yeah. And right, it's that identity they form and said, I'm a cleaner. This is my job. This is what I do. Right. And that it just made me think of that when we
Yeah.
talk about identity and becoming that version of ourselves that we always want to be. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Another example. This is actually from the Atomic Habits, where he talks about two people who are trying to quit smoking, right? And let's say smoker A, someone offers smoker A cigarette, and smoker A says, "No, thank you. I'm trying to quit smoking." And smoker B says, "No, thank you. I'm not a smoker."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's creating that different person, creating that new identity for yourself. So yeah, I love that. I love any talk about identity.
Yeah, I mean, what's really important about that example that you just gave is both of those people achieve the same thing, right? Both of them passed up the cigarette, but one person in a different circumstance, maybe under different cognitive circumstances as well. Smoker A it might not make that same decision just because they haven't foreclosed that part of the identity, like you said. So
Right.
yeah, I just want to emphasize that one as well. I think that James Clear again talked about the Peter Attia interview. We'll link that, but of course he talks about it in the book, as you mentioned as well.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. J, I wanted to switch gears here a little bit in terms of talking about how you actually practice now, right? So we kind of just went through the acronym. We talked about identity, purpose. Now, when you're trying to influence change in your patients, how much does the data matter? Personally, I'm a big data guy, right? Like, I would love to know the guidelines for exercise. How much of that are you talking about the guidelines with your patients?
I definitely do mention the guidelines. However, so like according to the physical activity guidelines, they recommend at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity and 75 minutes of vigorous. What I tell them, I extrapolate information from that. So a lot of patients that I see right now, most of them are elderly. So I tell them, I give them a quick thing. I say 30 for 3. Can you do 30 for 3? And they're like, "Ooh, what's 30 for 3?" And I'm like, "Can you walk for 30 minutes for 3 days a week?" They're like, "Yeah, I think we can do that." And because then if I say 150 minutes a week, 150
Right.
minutes a week, whoa, right? Who, like, if from not walking at all to 150 minutes a week? That's a lot for someone to take in, right? So I give them that. Can you do that? That can I allow them to get that quick victory, that quick win, 30 minutes, 3 days a week. That's all I ask. And then I follow up with them. I'm like, okay, so did you do your 30 for 3? Oh yeah, that was easy. No problem. Actually, I did 45 minutes the other day. I'm like, oh, okay, you did? Nice. And so I use the guidelines, but I also think about the person as well, right? Because sometimes the guidelines, it could be overwhelming. So I use that. I extrapolate information in a way that is more palatable for the patient.
Awesome. And then, oh, go ahead, Alter.
So, sorry.
No, I was gonna transition into kind of weightlifting, but if you have another question, go for it in regards to this.
Now, I was going to say if we can specify it even a little bit further, right? So again, going back to both Charles Duhigg and James Clear, they talk about how the habit loop, right? It's a 4-step process. Basically, you have a cue, you have a craving to do something, then you have either a routine or a response, and then you have the reward, right?
Mhm.
And so you talked about the reward towards the end, and so what is the cue that you'll tell them? Like, how will they incorporate that 30 minutes, right? Is it going to be first thing in the morning? Like, how detailed is that conversation that you're having? I think
Mhm.
if we kind of lay it out for people, that might be, it might be a bit more clear.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So I always tell my patients, if if it's not scheduled, then it's not going to happen. So I tell them, I'm like, well, when is the optimal time of day for you to do any type of physical activity? I know for me, it's in the morning. So I'll ask them, I'm like, okay, well, give me a rundown of your day. And we'll discuss, okay, well, do you think you can exercise during this time, or not this time because I have to take the kids to work, or not this time because I have to yeah, pick up my grandparent or grandchildren. So I have them go through a rundown of their day, and I actually help them come up with a plan before they leave, so they know, okay, this is what I'm going to do at this time on these days. And it's not something intense. Like I said, it's either 30 for 3, or okay, 30 for 3, but okay, at 8 a.m. on Monday, because I know I have time then, and my wife will take my grandchildren to school, for example, and then on Wednesday I'll do it at noon. So I actually help them come up with a time, a day, and what they're going to do before they leave.
Do you, I don't want to say do you hold them accountable, but we know that accountability with a partner is one of the most effective ways to make sure that we follow through with our commitments, right?
Hmm.
We know that. When they schedule in a calendar, is that something that's shared with you? Do you suggest they kind of find a partner to do that with? Is that something you say?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of it depends. So, some of I'm currently working at the VA, so some of the vets that I see, some of them do a lot of the stuff with their significant other, right? So, and they usually tell me this information because I'm always asking about exercise and habits already. So that information just kind of unravels itself. So sometimes I don't even have to ask about accountability because they already told me, oh yeah, I'm doing juicing with my wife, and me and my wife are doing this, and my family does this. I'm like, okay, that's perfect. That's your accountability right there. So sometimes I don't even have to say it. Um, Other times it's not that simple because sometimes they don't have that accountability. And that's actually a great idea to like have a shared schedule with them to help them be accountable. But um I don't have any specific way to hold them accountable. I just kind of listen and just see like what their day-to-day affairs are in terms of lifestyle changes, and I'll know or not whether they already have accountability, or this is a person that I'm going to like hold closer so that I can make sure that they're um, doing all those lifestyle changes that we've spoken about.
Yeah, I could see that one going two ways, right? I think that the accountability part I think is really important. I think that maybe Cialdini talks about this, the concept of social proofing. I hope I'm getting this right and not mislabeling it. But the classic example is if Darsh and I aren't exercising, or if Darsh is exercising and I'm not, and I tell Darsh, hey, like I will meet you tomorrow morning at I don't know, 6 a.m. in the morning. Definitely not 3 o'clock like you, Dr. J. But I'll meet you in the gym at 6 in the morning. Or let's say I don't tell him that, right? Let's say I set a goal, a New Year's resolution that I'm going to start working out and I'm going to go in before work at 6 in the morning. Well, when 6 o'clock rolls around and that alarm goes off or whatever time, 5:30, I'm much more likely to hit snooze because at that time it's going to be way more challenging, right? We're going to have a tremendous amount of willpower that we have to execute and really call upon to do that. However, if I've made this pact with Darsh and I know that Darsh is waiting for me at the
I'll
gym at
be
6
there.
o'clock, now it's much more challenging because I don't want to let him down. So from that standpoint, I think it's an extremely powerful thing. Where I can see it backfiring is I think that, you know, despite the fact that physicians now, it's, you know, it's kind of looking at your like you said, coach. Patients sometimes don't want to let your physician down, right? And so from that standpoint, I wonder if that's something backward. I haven't personally used it, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. I mean, maybe you can try it and give us some feedback and let me know what you think. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that actually.
But okay, so this also lends into the coaching realm as well, because I feel that, being a doctor and being a coach they're almost like complete opposites, right? So with, doctoring, we provide those recommendations. It's almost, I don't want to say coercion, but but it comes from, an inherent desire to see our patients well, right? So that's where it comes from. So, but to the patient, it's like, oh, like I need to comply with what my doctor says, or else I'll be succumb to all these diseases and all these illnesses and may potentially die, right? Um, and we know the science, we know the evidence, so that's where it comes from. But it also comes from, as physicians, an inherent need to see our patients well. And coaching is actually, they call it rolling with the resistance, right? So even though they're resistant to change, it's approaching them from from a sense of non-judgment and curiosity. Because when you do that, you are setting the field. You're creating the atmosphere, right? And with creating that atmosphere, you're allowing them to be more open, more vulnerable with you, to find out what those underlying feelings and emotions of why they're resistant to change. And by delving into those underlying feelings, they're also discovering themselves, and they're discovering their own autonomous motivation. And that's where it should come from. It should come from themselves, right? Because if I'm motivated to change myself, then they're going to want to change because they're inherently motivated. It's nothing that I'm extrinsically doing to motivate them. It's coming from themselves. I'm just serving as a guide. I'm facilitating that self-discovery, but ultimately it comes from them.
Absolutely. I think intrinsic motivation,
which is
right?
complete opposite from being a doctor.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, right? Like the paternalism that we feel as physicians, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was just reading this recent stat, right? Like, I don't even, probably more than 20% of people actually don't even get their prescriptions filled or, whatnot. Don't actually take their full course antibiotics or skip pills, etc. Because that intrinsic motivation is lacking from them. So it also begs the question: do you prescribe exercise? Like, do you actually write it on a pad because you think that, they'll adhere better to it?
Yeah. So it depends. Yeah. So it depends on the patient. So it really depends. It depends what level that they're on. I will prescribe them, different exercises to do. Like I said, in residency, I would even demonstrate it.
Yeah. Right.
um, in the clinic for them. So it depends on their level. It depends on their capacity. It depends on their mental capacity, like where they are mentally to like even want to exercise. So it's variable, but more often than not in this population, I don't. I usually start out with very, very simple exercises, like for example, walking, and then I'll tell them different ways to make it more challenging, such as like adding ankle weights or carrying a gallon of water or carrying a book bag. So things like that. Very, very simple exercises.
Absolutely. So, we talked about how walking is an awesome place to start. And we know cardio has obviously amazing benefits, but we also know that weightlifting and muscle building and muscle strength provide their own set of benefits. How do you incorporate that with your patients when I know most of the population who can't even fathom exercise, you're now telling them to squat or bicep curls and technique and form, right? It's a whole nother world that they're being introduced. introduced to. How do you approach that?
Yeah, so I make it super, super simple. I don't even talk about exercise equipment because most of my patients don't even have exercise equipment at home. So I don't even mention that. So I'll mention like, getting a water bottle because having a water bottle or a gallon and using that as weight, and I'll perform bicep curls in the office to show them, or doing shoulder presses, and I'll mimic them, and I'll talk about form. I'll talk about if you're going walking to, get ankle weights, or carrying a book bag and putting stuff in the book bag. Or like sometimes grabbing a bag of vegetables and using that as shoulder presses. Um, so very, very simple exercises depending on their interest. Also, as well, I have to gauge that as well. I have to gauge like their readiness to change. So I'll mention some things versus not mention anything based on my assessment of of their readiness to change. I'll mention, okay, resistance bands. That's really easy way to incorporate exercising. I know this one patient, he traveled for work. I'm like, oh, that's a great way. You put the resistance bands in your bag, and you can have that with you on the go. Also, TRX, that's super easy. That you can use to incorporate weight training at home. You just put it over the door, and then there's so many. Oh my gosh, I love TRX. So many exercises that you could do with a TRX. So those are the various ways. So I gauge their readiness to change, and based on my assessment of the readiness to change, I'll make it simple versus complex. It just depends on the patient.
For those who don't know,
TRX is actually, so resistance. Actually, I don't think I know what TRX stands for, but it's a suspension trainer.
Suspension
trainer, right? So it's super easy. I have one in my own apartment. You put it over your door, you close your door, and there are so many things you can do. You could do bikes. Oh my God, so many things. Pikes, rows, so many things. I do one-legged lunges with them. Oh, it's so much fun. I love my TRX.
Dr. Shea, you are clearly the exception when it comes to, as you mentioned, helping transform lives this way, right? Doing it through exercise, lifestyle change, coaching. It's funny that you talk about physicians being coaches. That's exactly what my personal statement for sports fellowship was about. Do you see a future in medicine? As you know, the name of the show is Medicine Redefined. Do you see a future of where this is the norm and it's the rule, not the exception? And if so, do you have any thoughts on how we get there?
For sure. For sure. For sure. And for sure. A part of me embarking in this journey is to help inspire other physicians, because I know that I'm not the only one who wants something more, right? A lot of people who entered into this medical journey, we all have like an inherent need to help, right? Just like any physician that you talk to. The thing is that medicine like can has almost jaded us, right? And it's and you have to find your way, right? But you don't have to do it by yourself, right? It's the community, the tribe, like we spoke about earlier. It's finding people who think like you, who want more like you, getting into community with those types of people. It's also about bringing up people behind you on the journey, right? I know for a difference. I know for a fact that there are medical students following me on social media and residents following it on social media, and they're like, how is she doing this? Right? I think about the impact that I'm leaving behind, right? This is for the medical community. But someone had to veer off path, right? You have to do something different to be someone different, right? And I feel like, I'm one of those people to veer off a different path. And I know that I'm inspiring others behind me, right? I know that because I get people in my DM saying, how do you do this? And how do you do that? Or like, medical students and residents will DM me. So I think this requires a collective effort of leveraging all the power, all the knowledge, all the intellect, all the bright minds that we have in medicine and using it to push medicine forward. And the thing is, it's not, relying on someone else to do it for us. We're not waiting for anybody to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We have to do this for our patients. We have to do this for our families. Okay? Because otherwise, physician burnout is real. Moral injury is real. All of that is real. We all have an inherent need to serve our patients the best of our abilities. And it's there. The inherent need is there. But if physicians don't see other physicians doing that, they won't think that they're capable, right? So it's things like this, platforms that you've created like this, right? This is what motivates us. This is what gives us together, brings us together. This is what creates community. It creates inspiration. It creates a legacy. It creates all of this stuff. But we have to veer off a different path in order to be something different, to create something different for ourselves, for our patients, and for our families.
Absolutely. I mean, Dr. J, your passion and purpose shine through the screen, right? Ultimash and I stand with you 100% on that. And this is why we brought you on here to collaborate and really talk about the changes that we can make. And, there's a quote by Confucius who says, every person has two lives, and the second begins when they realize they have one. And I like to change that up a little bit to say every physician has two lives, and the second begins when they truly figure out why they want to do medicine. Because I know as pre-meds, we have this idealistic idea. We get into medicine and we say, whoa, what the hell just happened here? Like, this is not what I was expecting.
Exactly.
Right. And then it's up to us, though, like you said, right? Like it's up to us because nobody's going to come to save us and tell us what to do. So I absolutely love that. But Dr. J, what is next for you? So you're currently in San Diego, you're doing locum, but what's your future looking like?
Yeah, so my future is looking at becoming a mindset and fitness coach. So I am doing, various things to try to leverage my own community of people who are interested in mental and also physical fitness. I just finished a virtual fitness masterclass, which was awesome. That was on Saturday, and I'll be doing more things like that. So yeah, that's the realm that I'm going into right now, and I think I'm still going to be doing locums because it allows me to be very flexible, and it also allows me to give time to this other passion that I love. Right? I love being a physician, but like this like feeds my soul. There's only so much feeding of my soul sometimes that I can do in the clinic room. But being a mindset and fitness coach, this is like really, really, truly what I'm so passionate about. I feel like it's definitely a calling and something that I love to just alter. I just want to alter, provide an alternative focus to the fitness industry in terms of preventing chronic disease through both mental and physical fitness. So being an internal medicine resident and seeing, like I said, the huge list of medicines, it would just like give me palpitations. And I really want more. I really want so much more. I know that there's so much more healing that needs to be done in this world. And I know that I'm just one contributor to the healing. You guys are definitely too. So I just want to be as much of a healer as I can. And my goal is also, I always tell myself that I want to leave this world better than I found it. All right. So that is my contribution to the world. It's providing healing in the unique way that I've been gifted and designed to do.
As one of our previous guests quoted, I think Muhammad Ali is, service for others is the rent that you pay in this world, right? We're looking forward to a day where you don't have to pick and choose between doing the daytime physician job and also doing this thing on the side that's feeding your soul. Hopefully all the things that you mentioned in the near future will come to fruition and it'll all be one, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be one. And that's what we're all hoping for. I want to thank you, Dr. J, for all the awesome things that you're doing, for inspiring us, for inspiring our listeners and continuing doing the badass things that you're doing. Excited to continue working with you and collaborating, like you mentioned. I'm excited that you're part of our tribe and we're part of each other's tribe now, so we can continue doing this. But lay out the places where people can find you at social media, where else if they want to get in touch with you, they want to learn about you, maybe they want to pick your brain on things, where can they come at you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. If you go to medfitdo, that's MEDFITDO, and you could click on my link tree, and I have all my social media links there. I'm on YouTube, so there's a link there. I also have a link to set up a discovery call with me if you're interested in a mindset and fitness coaching or just want to learn more. I'll be really happy to jump on a phone call to find out what your goals are and see how we can be a fit together. And I also have a freebie as well on the link tree. It's 5 tips to increase your motivation to exercise with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. So those are just like mindset hacks that some of them that I spoke about on the call today. That's there for you as well.
Awesome. And we will post all those links in the show notes. Now, Dr. J, last question we have for you. You kind of already answered a lot of it. So, I'll change it up here a little bit for you. So the question is, how do we add the health back in healthcare? But if you can just give me 3 words, let's say, because I know we had a lot of buzzwords today that you were describing. I'll make it a little challenging for you.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I love challenges. Okay. So the first word that comes to mind is impact, right? So impact. Mm-hmm. The second word that comes to mind is community. And the third word that comes to mind is lead, right? Because in order to change the face of healthcare, we have to lead. We have to show up and show out as leaders of this space. This is our space. It's our space. And we have to lead it like it is ours.
Damn right. Love it. Impact, community,
I love that.
Lead.
Thanks, Dr. J.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you guys so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that inspirational and informative conversation with Dr. J. I know I left that truly fired up. She's a special person, and I'm glad we had her on the show. If you found that to be valuable as well, please be sure to subscribe, review, and share with anyone who you think will gain value from this. Now, before you sign off, please remember this important disclaimer that everything in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, nor should it be construed as medical advice. No physician-patient relationship is formed, and anything discussed in this podcast does not represent the views of our employers. We recommend that you seek the guidance of your physician regarding any specific health-related issues. And until next time, thank you for listening.